So now we're looking at This Is Just to Say, which is the title and also really the beginning of the poem, first line, by William Carlos Williams. And what's the story here? Amaris, what's going on? What happened?
Well, Williams was a very inconsiderate husband and decided to
How do we know he's a husband?
Well,
Pretty easy assumption based on...
because we know that he's living with someone whose intentions he was aware of, that she was going to eat the plums, probably, that were in the icebox.
At the time, this is a marriage. Is it a new marriage in the honeymoon glow?
No, they clearly have a routine going since he knows what she eats for breakfast. He knows her habits and preferences.
Why would he
and knows that she'll forgive him.
He knows. That's why he's appetitious. William Carlos Williams this is the Whitmanian. He's appetitious. This is a word that Bob Perlman likes to use, and I think it's completely right here. He's hungry, but I think it's better to say he's appetitious. He has desire. So he's the kind of guy and the kind of poet who just takes what he wants. Yeah? Okay. All right, here we go now, Max. Is there a sexual politics? When there's this, boy, did I go all the way to the top? Is there a sexual politics? I mean, this is a marriage, as Amaris, I think, rightly deduces, that's comfortable. Each knows the other, and he takes what he wants.
Sure, he has a certain sense of privilege and entitlement that we see here in the poem. Even though it's playful, he still knows that she was saving these, that she was planning to eat these, and he went in. There was a sort of a violation of her property and also of her space, and just
when
kind of going in and taking what he wants.
When Williams commented on this, he said, well, it's almost the rape of the icebox. So
sure, that's a
clearly,
loaded word. Yeah.
It's a loaded word.
And also, if we think of Flossie's response, it's also playful, but it's generous, it's giving, it's forgiving too. And in fact, instead of making any mention about the plums that he ate out of the icebox, she just replenished the icebox. It's her sort of role to make sure that he's well fed, that he has his lunch waiting.
I think it's generous, but it's also just a touch condescending too, when she talks about the tea and just turn on the gas, like that's all you have to do.
She's treating him like someone who doesn't understand the kitchen.
Which I don't think he does.
Which he does.
All he understands is what he wants, and so he takes. Yeah.
She's the happy genius of that household.
If her poem is successful as a poem, then she is the happy genius, or the somewhat unhappy genius. But the question is what he gets out of this situation. What does Bill Williams get out of this situation? Emily, what would you say he gets from it?
A sensory experience.
Gets to eat a plum, which is just about as juicy a thing.
And restore them in the poem.
What's that?
And restore them in the poem.
He gets the poem.
Yeah.
This is not just a refrigerator note, an exchange of refrigerator notes. This is a family where the husband and wife aren't seeing each other in the course of the day, because he's a doctor and he has his practice. That's referred to in her note. Please switch off the telephone. Several people called up about office hours. I'm kind of tired of taking all the calls from your patients. You know, this is difficult, this life, this arrangement we have. And they don't see each other. So they exchange refrigerator notes, as we call them. It's a genre. Anybody ever left a refrigerator note or a kitchen note? What's the context socially? What's the purpose of that genre?
Well, it's informational, but it's also very tonal all of the time. And I definitely think that there's something maybe aggressive, and this is just to say, and definitely passive-aggressive in reply.
Passive-aggressive in reply and just plain old aggressive in his... Yeah. So, in a way, this is also part of the breakthrough of modernism. Williams writes a poem, makes a poem out of a note, a domestic note. Are we to celebrate that? I like to celebrate it to the extent that we do celebrate it. Why, Anna?
Well, I think the kind of incidental nature of it is what makes it so sweet.
Sweet, keep going. So sweet.
So sweet, so compact, so
Everybody else?
So cold.
Cold in one way, yes.
It's
Sweet,
definitely cold.
domestic. Keep going.
Quotidian, everyday,
Quotidian.
ordinary.
I mean, this is the great thing about Williams and his colleagues at this point. They're taking this never would have been a poem in the High Victorian period. We needed grand subjects, and certainly domesticity down to this level, and intimacy, the sexual politics of a marriage well on, that kind of a comfort level that creates this kind of tension that doesn't get confronted.
you can think about this refrigerator note as kind of a ready-made, if you think about like in the Duchampian sense.
Take the refrigerator note and put it in the museum and say that's art. It's just as audacious, almost. Yeah.
There's also something about, this is playing off of almost an epistolary tradition, especially if we think of the response, and we think of the epistolary mode as letters between lovers, and this is sort of a reduction, almost, somebody said earlier, quotidian, domestic version of that. To go to what you were saying about sexual politics.
But if
this
it were
is what
really
becomes.
a ready-made, then the note would be in prose, and it would be presented as handwritten. What does Williams do to the thing he could have found, his own note? What does he do to aestheticize it? What are some of the things that he does? I mean, obviously he lineates it. Can you say a little more about that? What does he do? Dave? What does he do? This isn't a refrigerator note, it's a poem.
Well, just on a surface level, he breaks it up into stanzas.
Okay, we haven't seen too many refrigerator notes that are in stanzas.
Well, it's the same thing that Duchamp does, arguably, by taking the urinal and turning it on its head. It's a ready-made, but he's also manipulating it in some way.
Slightly. This
Yeah.
is more than slight.
Yeah, I would agree.
I don't think it's ready-made. I think that in crafting the poem, he kind of endows the situation that he's writing about with a poetic quality, which isn't ready-made in the poem, and I think that's kind of the point.
But that's what a ready-made does. It takes a normal object and turns it into an artistic object, I think. I think that's what Duchamp.
But with surprisingly little effort.
Right.
That turns out to be significant. This looks like
But there's
a lot of
definitely
effort.
craft
This is
inherent.
this is an imagist poem taken to the domestic situation. You know, again, a little like the Poundian situation. I've got plums. I've got you. And what do? I don't describe what I've done to you, the violation. I describe how sweet and how cold and how wonderful the experience was. And that's what I want. And what I really want is a poem. So I've taken this domestic situation and turned it into a poem. It's my benefit. It's a little like the encounter. What's left from that encounter is the image of a person who eyed Pound and turned into a Japanese paper napkin and is now in the last line of a poem that Pound wrote. Very Poundian. Can we go back finally to the rape of the icebox? Any other thing that has to be said about that? We're not jumping up and down with anger at Williams. Amaris, Williams fan?
Yeah, I mean, well, we're taking part in his appreciation and experience of the plum. So that's sort of redeems
Gloss
it
is
at
gone,
the
the
end.
plum is long, long gone.
Yeah. His
The
description
poem,
remains, however.
the poem remains, and it's the
Right.
thing we celebrate. How wonderful that Williams could make a domestic situation into a poem. He gets all the credit for it. No problem with that, because we do believe in art's quasi-eternal offering to us, Emily?
No, but he still stole the plums, didn't he? I'm just a little bit hung up on this. There just seems a sort of, dare I say, a kind of narcissism in taking his own sort of unfiltered and maybe very minimally treated experience and saying this is art and appreciate it as such. And it gives me a type of ability to transgress that he might not have otherwise had.
So in a domestic situation, one, the husband can take the wife's plum, the wife can take the husband's plum. But when you render it into a poem, the husband who's a poet can make it a poem that is anthologized forever. The wife can write a note, somewhat prosaic, that gets crumpled up on her desk and apparently retyped by Williams and put into his archive, where we have to fetch it out of the garbage, as it were, and create her alternate subjectivity as a kind of restorative. So finally, the domestic situation is potentially equal, but the poetic situation is unequal. Let's close by saying something about the title. This is just to say, so many people have used that. I use that all the time. If I want to do what? This is just to say. It's a great little preface. Max, rhetorically, what's it doing? This is just to say.
It's establishing the occasion for his speech, for his utterances.
And what kind of occasion? A grand occasion for heroism?
No, not at all. It's just opening up that little space where he can just say it.
And not make a big deal out of
And
it,
not make a
even
big
though he's
stink.
done something terrible.
And I think it keeps it about him instead of saying "Dear Flossie" as the title or "To My Wife."
Yes. You have this, meaning this poem, and then you have say. Justice, the word just seems to be fake modesty. I've written a
I think it's all
fantastic
fake
thing.
modesty.
It's all fake modesty. Dave, final word.
Even the apology is funny because he does say, "Forgive me," but then he can't help himself and he goes to rub it in some more.
Forgive me, I couldn't help myself. I'm apoptitious. I take advantage of you and I make an art out of it. I win. It's a win-win situation for him. And I think it's a lose-lose for her, but I'm not sure. It could be a lose-win, but probably a lose-lose. Oh well, I suppose the message is don't marry a poet. Poor Buffy.